Welcome back to Classic Credits. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. This has been an incredible year for movies. Today's review is inspired by another awesome movie, Pacific Rim. Pacific Rim is basically a movie about giant monsters fighting giant robots. Some call it a reimagining of Godzilla, but it actually is more along the lines of Japanese anime classics like Voltron or the more commonly compared to series Neon Genesis Evangelion. But the movie reminded me of a great pair of games made by SNK, King of the Monsters. Ah, the Neo Geo, one of my favorite systems ever for many reasons. I'll never get tired of that promo screen. The first King of the Monsters game was released by SNK for the Neo Geo in 1991. King of the Monsters was basically a monster-themed wrestling game. You could choose from 6 different creatures: Gion the Lizard, Wu the Ape, Poison Ghost, the Poison Ghost, Rocky the Golem, Beetlemania the Beetle, and Astro Guy. Each of these characters takes inspiration from classic monsters cinema. The gameplay is pretty simple. You wrestle the monsters until, I guess what is an intergalactic referee, can count as you pin the other monster's shoulders to the ground. What made the game unique was nearly everything in the stage was destructible and vehicles could be picked up and used as weapons. The game contains the monstrous destruction of the Japanese islands in the towns of Tokyo, Kyoto, Kobe, Osaka, and Hiroshima. The game was actually not particularly well received when it was released. I have to agree, its premise is a bit silly, especially the pinning part. But the game was important because it led to the amazing King of the Monsters 2 in 1992. King of the Monsters 2 is a true classic. They figured out where they went wrong in the first game and they improved on it in every way. The biggest change is they changed it from a wrestling game to a side-scrolling brawler. They reduced the cast to 3 heroes from the first game, but all have been upgraded to face the new threat of an alien monster invasion. You now control Super Gion, Cyber Wu, and Atomic Guy. You must defend the Earth against 7 other monsters. You must battle your way through various terrains to reach each monster and beat them into oblivion. No crazy monster wrestling this time. The levels look better and more things can be used as weapons, including the buildings. There's also more of a variety to the levels as the action leaves Japan in the second installment. You go to America, France, a desert, seabed, volcano, and some other locations. Each playable monster has several levels of power-ups that they can attain that change your appearance and damage output. Your monsters have basic attacks, jump attacks, grapples, and chargeable special moves. It's a pretty standard brawler mechanic, but it just seems so much more when you're as tall as a skyscraper and then you can use said skyscraper as a weapon. It's hard to estimate how many of these games are out in the wild due to the way that Neo Geo arcade machines are set up. They were multicade systems, carrying up to 4 of any game in the Neo Geo library. There were quite a few of the Neo Geo MVS machines out there, so finding a machine and swappable cartridge to go in it isn't that difficult. You can also get an arcade perfect version of both games for the Neo Geo home console. More on that in a bit. One thing I would like to add here is that the Neo Geo was pretty impressive. The first Neo Geo VCS was released in 1990. Companies were still making games for it, and subsequently its home console little brother until 2004. The Neo Geo is the longest officially supported platform in gaming history. This is not bad considering the machine was less powerful than an early 90s Macintosh computer. In 2004, it still had great looking games and is one of the best 2D platforms of all time. It's actually very nice to see the Neo Geo making somewhat of a comeback with the official Neo Geo X Gold system. This brings us back to the home releases. As mentioned earlier, the Neo Geo platform was unique in the fact that the home Neo Geo console was basically an arcade machine in a box. Both King of the Monsters games were released for the Neo Geo AES, which is the home console, but like all other games for that system were very expensive as they were basically the arcade hot swappable boards but inside of a cartridge. Both King of Monsters games were released for the Super NES and Genesis by Takara, who did most of the SNK's ports to other consoles. The games were very good ports, but the King of the Monsters lacks two characters, Wu and Poison Ghost. While the Super NES version of the King of Monsters 2 was more or less exactly like the arcade game, and is my preferred classic home version of that game, the Genesis version was substantially different. You could almost call it King of the Monsters 2 Tournament Fighter. All 10 monsters were playable and play in a fighter that plays very similar to the first King of the Monsters. Special moves are pulled off with standard fighting game motions. The fights are self-contained in a small little area, no scrolling level, no brawling, barriers, same thing. While being different than the arcade version, the Genesis version is still a good game, and it's worthwhile picking up for your collection if you're a fan of King of the Monsters. The first King of the Monsters is available on the Wii's Virtual Console. The second game was only available for the Neo Geo, Super NES, and Genesis, but an exact arcade port of the first game was also made available for the SNK Arcade Classics Volume 1 for the Wii, PlayStation 2, and PSP. Thanks again for checking out Classic Credits. I hope you enjoyed it. Things are coming, good things. This show will be evolving a bit, and I hope to have some new themed shows up soon, and more. Make sure and check out Pacific Rim, check out the King of the Monsters series, check out the Neo Geo. It's worth it. See you next time, where I once again hope to show you a game that you may have forgotten or never even heard about.